Good evening, everyone. Greg Dillon from GreatDrams here. Hope you're all doing well, are safe, are all indoors and ready to kick off this virtual whiskey archive tasting where we're delving into whiskies from our archive as well as one new one which is effectively being launched tonight. Now please just give me a few seconds while I make sure all the tech is linked up and working, and then we will kick off. Cheers. Right, we're nearly there. Nearly there. Alright, let's just make sure this is all going well. Excellent, we've got 52 of you watching already. That's marvellous. I'm massively impressed that you guys are so punctual. And all the comments are coming through. Let's make this bright so I can actually read. That would be superb all round. Hello Gavin, Billy, Sarah, Lindsay, Adam and everyone else who's saying hi. Excellent. I hope you can all hear. Right, let me just check that it's actually working on my side of it. Perfect, perfect, perfect. No pressure, Mr. Bishop, thank you very much. You may have noticed I've changed slightly this evening. I've actually tucked my shirt in, which, as any of you who sit with me in meetings and pubs normally would know, I very, very rarely do that. Excellent. 87 people ready to start. Awesome. Billy, thank you very much for saying you're receiving loud and clear. I was going to ask, but didn't know if I was going to get any level of good response. So, first things first. Apologies for my cough. Don't worry, it's not the dreaded virus. It is just a hay fever issue. Apologies. I wanted to say it now so you don't think, oh Christ, he might keel over at any minute. That would be less impressive. So yeah, thank you for all attending and being so punctual. We're up to 96 people, which is incredible considering it's only 3 minutes past the hour. People being punctual makes me very, very happy to these things, and indeed all normal tastings too. So for tonight, we're going to go through the 5 whiskies that I mentioned in the preview video this afternoon. That is Invergordon, Girvan, BenRiach, Craigellachie, and then our batch number 3 from our blended cask series, which is our oldest release to date, and technically it's being released today because we've not really told many people about it before. So, Jono, I'm doing very well, thank you, sir. Mr. McShane, great to see your words. I would love to share a dram with you at some point. For those who don't know, John McShane, who's just posted a nice little comment on there, he was one of the guys instrumental in introducing me to people in the whiskey industry when I started out, and was and is and always will be a phenomenally nice man. We had a wonderful trip to Islay together once, where we had a wonderful week, loads of great whiskey tastings, and then we both got attacked by a 70-year-old farmer, which was weird, but you know, stories to tell and all that. And we find somewhere to put the iPad, so that's the backup device should anything go pear-shaped. Hello Trevor, Kevin, Matthew, Mike, hello everyone, indeed. I won't go through the whole set. That potentially could take a lifetime. So 111 you on board, I think we're good to go. So, 5 whiskies. As always, drink responsibly. I always advocate trying them neat first and then adding water to taste. All of these are either at 46.2% ABV or at 48.2% ABV. Although if I look along the line, just checking, actually no, all of them are at 46.2, so we're good, absolutely. No messing around with different ABVs. That means something I don't need to necessarily talk about as we go through. And these are all limited edition releases from GreatDrams, from us, from myself and Kirsty. We are, just to introduce us, for those who weren't involved in the last tasting we did a couple of weeks ago, or who have forgotten who the hell we are, wondering why this man with a roughly homeless beard and a budding afro is talking to you on Facebook Live. We're an award-winning family business who are independent bottlers, amongst other things within the whisky industry. And we traditionally, or typically, do a lot of offline events. So food and drink shows, makers markets, all of that kind of thing, around the Northwest, and then bigger shows around the UK. And the odd whisky tasting in China, which I'm pretty sure won't happen again for a long time. So we do lots of different things. And we have released, I think, 9 or 10 whiskies, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 official releases as of tonight, with our batch 3 of the blended cask. And each one has done really well. Each one is sold out. And you're going to try whiskies tonight, which sadly you can't buy. There are a couple left on the website. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. And then blended cask batch 3, which is actually a blended malt 12-year-old. As I say, we're launching it tonight. Only, I think we had a private sale for kind of our friends and family, so to speak, a few weeks ago. And I think there's about 120 bottles left. So there's actually, technically, and this is not a hint necessarily, but with 125 of you currently watching, 5 of you would be disappointed if the other 120 went and made that a one-night sellout. Just saying. Anyway, some great comments popping up. I like your afro. It is very soft. It is very soft. Thank you very much. I do truly appreciate that, John. It is soft to use Head and Shoulders, you know. Do it the right way. And yeah, shall we crack on? Get that first one in your hand. We're starting with the Invergordon 11-year-old, which, if I just show you here, take that a bit closer. The Invergordon 11-year-old. This is obviously an archive bottle. We only keep a couple of each release, and so I actually then normally keep an open, smaller bottle of each, so that I can do little things like this. And yeah, it was the first release we actually put out to market. It was years in the making. We took our time getting the brand right, getting the bottle design right, choosing the right whiskey to release. That was important to us. And this one came out first. Only 160 bottles ever produced. And for us, it was just crazy smooth, easy drinking. A solid 11-year-old single grain Scotch whiskey. So we're going to have 2 single grains, 2 single malts, and then also a blended malt. So you get to try 3 different styles this evening, which hopefully is intriguing and interesting for you. Can I just check, can everyone hear me? You don't all have to say yes, but if a couple of you could just comment immediately and say if you can, that would be great. No one's responding. That makes me nervous. Yes, Tom Lavin says yes. I think yes means yes to being able to hear me. If not, this will be quite weird, and I might have to mime out my tasting notes and my thoughts about the whiskey. So, excellent, loud and clear. Yes. Excellent. You can all stop saying yes now. That's great. Thank you very much. Instant live feedback. That's what we need and what I need and want. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bishop, I do indeed need a whiskey for that cough. I sincerely apologise. Those of you who joined a little bit later, unfortunately, I do have a cough today. It is nothing dangerous, but it is incredibly annoying. Hay fever, it's like being allergic to summer, which, you know, is not ideal, is it, for those traditional 3.5 days a year of summer we get in the UK. Anyway, Invergordon, for me, super smooth, owned by Wyatt and Mackay, up in Scotland. And all of these are Scotch whiskies, in case anyone was in any doubt. And this is a workhorse distillery, similar to Girvan, in that it produces lots of grain whiskey that traditionally goes into blends. Blended Scotch being made up predominantly of grain whiskey, and then top dressers or single malts that go into it to create different flavour profiles and whatnot. And until recently, and recently I'm talking like the last 5, maybe 10 years, maybe actually 5 or 7 years really, single grain has not really been an uber popular choice for distillers to release in its own right. So it's so in recent times, people have, like Douglas Lane, for example, the other independent bottlers who we absolutely love to bits. They've released some really ancient grain whiskies, all absolutely knockout, phenomenal stuff. Girvan, which we'll get onto in a minute, released their range 2014, I think it was, or maybe just a little bit before, to bring grain to the market, but then didn't really do a huge amount with it. Unfortunately, it's incredible stuff. Really, really is incredible stuff. And so single grain normally is thought of as the Beckham whiskey with Haig Club and Haig Clubman, the second release, or the aftershave bottle, as a lot of people call it. But that Haig Club brand has a hell of a lot of history and heritage, and is a great whiskey. Personally, I prefer Clubman to the original. I prefer the original bottle, much more beautiful as an object, but the second one, the whiskey, for me, much more flavour depth and layers. So grain whiskey as a whole has got some interest. Often it's seen as a gateway whiskey, so it's a whiskey for people who traditionally like gin or vodka. It's like, oh, well, actually, this is all right. It's smooth, it's easy drinking. It's something I want to go back to and can make amazing cocktails and highballs and things with. So grain whiskey for us has always been a fascinating thing, and we always try to have a grain whiskey in our range at any given time. Mostly because I absolutely love the stuff, that helps. But also because we find it helps people understand that there are different styles of whiskey and different types of production methods. So if we nose this guy, and hopefully you already have, and you've been doing that whilst I've been going on about the stuff, it is incredibly smooth, really buttery, quite like buttercream, and just really just easy on the nose. For me, I could nose that thing for hours. Absolutely love it. So smooth. And I don't think this one would ever really need water. For me, on the palate, there's buttery, creamy notes come through, but then also quite a nice raisiny fruit note is coming through from me as well. A lot of interesting different things. A lot more depth than people think single grain has. By pure coincidence, the two grain whiskies that we've released that we're going through tonight are 11 years old. Total coincidence. And then our new grain whiskey from the Port Dundas distillery, which happens to have one just lurking around as always, is our 10-year-old release from a dead distillery, meaning that you literally cannot buy any more Port Dundas grain whiskey that has been distilled after, I think it was 2010 when the distillery shut down. A dead or silent or mothballed distillery. It's completely gone. It's probably now as a car park or something. So we tried to mix it up and have different things in the range. So Port Dundas is our first silent or dead distillery release. Once it's gone, truly gone, because they're not producing and haven't done for a decade. Our Invergordon actually picked up, where is it? It's one of these things. Oh no, it was a certificate. Yeah, unfortunately we didn't get a trophy for it. It was a certificate. But he got this silver medal in the Independent Bottlers Challenge of 2018. So for our first release to do that, really blew us away. It's a very humbling experience actually. My wife Kirsty and I, we do everything in this business together. We're 50-50 in it, and we together are GreatDrams. And we were blown away by getting that award. We were beaten out by SMWS actually, Mr. John McShane, and his merry band of friends. But we were really, really chuffed to have got that silver medal, because it told us that, you know what, it's a proof of concept. It validated the fact that we could actually do what we thought we were doing reasonably well. And then also just kind of said, look, you know what, this is a really good idea, let's go for it. And so since then, everything's kind of grown and built and gone around there. So let me just have a look, see if you've got any questions that I can answer on Invergordon whilst we're on this one. Carol last tasted this in the 90s. Very good. Hope you enjoyed tasting it again. Excellent. Thank you, Bob, for telling me I'm loud and clear. Very buttery, exactly. Craig, the first whiskey is Invergordon, just in case you haven't caught that up. Excellent stuff. Okay, mostly people just saying the word Invergordon, which is, you know, fair play. You keep doing that. Ken, yes, the bottle display here is not bad, is it? This is the archive of all of our releases to date. We do more smaller ones and kind of private releases in the smaller bottles than we do in the big ones. And the gaps are for the bottles that I have here tonight. And then up here, just so people know, that's my kind of whiskey archive. So if there's a particular whiskey that I absolutely love as I'm drinking through the bottle, I typically, if it's not a bottle that is, you know, beautiful or ornate or something I want to stare at for a while, I will try and keep the last 100 ml from it and put it into one of those bottles and get it on the rack, so that it A, means that, you know, doing our recycling bit and making some space, but B, means I've got a reference point as well. And also when brands release second or third editions of the same brand or same release, I then have an archive to go back to and have a look to see just what it tasted like when they released the first batch or the second batch or whatever. So that's what that is. Let's see. Oh, and then yeah, some awards and stuff. That's nice. Excellent. There doesn't seem to be too many questions, apart from people asking if other people like it, which is fantastic. Philip Scales, best question so far. It may already be the best question, and I got my shoes from New Balance. They're actually personalised. I'll show you. You probably won't be able to see it, but it's got our family initials on the back of that one, and then on this one, it's got YNWA. You'll never walk alone. On there. So they're actually designed allegedly by Mr. Girvan. It's probably going to bring the view count right down to 3 people saying that, but there you go. Stuart, is cask maturation different for grain versus malt? Typically, grain whiskey normally goes into ex-bourbon casks, and that brings out the flavour quite well, and it's left there for you know, mass market blends probably around 3 to 5 years. For other products, for a lot older. So obviously whatever age is stated on the label, that's the age of the youngest component in any blend. So when we get to number 5 here, our 12-year-old, that's the age of the youngest component in there. So it normally goes into bourbon casks, and one master blender actually told me once that they didn't like putting grain into sherry casks because A, it doesn't draw the flavour as well as it does from bourbon casks, but B, they see it sometimes as a bit of a waste, something which I wholeheartedly disagree with. And we actually have a couple of grain casks maturing in ex-sherry casks right now for a future release, one of which is knocking around here. Oh, there we go. That was a sample from it recently, so it's taken a nice amount of colour with it. All cool. Hope that answers that question. Oh, excellent. So someone's added water and even more butter on the nose now, and also that pepper note. Yeah, completely agree. That pepper note does come through when you do add a little bit of water to it. Excellent. Owen, no, unfortunately, I think it's a size 11 shoe I take, just in case you were wondering. And yeah, John McShane, it didn't take me long to get LFC. In fairness, I avoided mentioning Liverpool last time, but here we go. Excellent. So I think that's most of the comments and questions from the first one. Thank you very much for your lovely comment there, Neil. Mr. Healy, brilliant, great. Your whiskey knowledge goes far past the question, do you like whiskey on the maker's market? Yes, it is. Know 1 or 2 things about it. Wouldn't ever profess to be an expert, but I do know a little bit about whiskey. 46.2 asks Paul Thornton, we bottle at 46.2% ABV typically, so either 46.2 or 48.2 with our range so far. And that is because purely when we were doing the sampling, the cask sampling, when we did our first couple of releases, so Invergordon and the Craigellachie we'll try later, we got the sample sent down at natural cask strength, which is super high, like 60 odd %. And so we try it at that strength just to see what happens. Normally blows your face off. And then we naturally bring it down with pure water down a couple of % at a time, just to see where our preference was for the flavour profile and for the for the experience that we wanted whiskey people to enjoy. And so we netted out, it's 46.2 for the first two. And I'll tell you a little story about the Craigellachie when we get there. Please someone remind me about the ABV at Craigellachie. Then for our Glen Tockers and our Port Dundas, actually we've raised it to 48.2 because we felt for Tockers it made it just so much more creamier and really kind of aided the mouthfeel. And for Port Dundas it gave a really nice cut through citrus note which wasn't there at the slightly lower ABV. So that's what we do. We try and keep a level of consistency, but if something works, it works, and we'll change. And hopefully we'll do some cask strength ones in the next year or two as well. Let's see. Stuart, no, I will not be doing the gin night in full Liverpool kit. Unless we potentially have been awarded the league, then there's always an option. There is a bottle, Liverpool branded bottle of Scotch in here for when that does happen. Let's just see, yeah. But no more questions on this. Which of the whiskies do I prefer? Asks Hattie. It's like trying to choose from my children. And there's always an answer to it, but I'll never say it publicly. The lightness in character, or lightness in colour, sorry, asks Claire. That actually is because we bottle at natural cask strength. We don't add any spirit caramel or the E150C, which is allowed to be used. It doesn't change the flavour at all, in my opinion, but does create a consistency of colour across bigger brand releases. And because we're not a bigger brand, if you look at all of the colours on here, I quite like the spectrum of colours as I look across all of these for our different releases. All natural, all non-chill filtered. That's just what we do. So some will naturally be lighter than others. But then if you look at even really old Ardbegs, they can be super, super light when you actually pour it from the gorgeous dark green bottle. You don't know until you pour it, but the colour doesn't really matter. I did a test on the last one of these, and I'll do it again now just to show you. Let me grab these two. Oh, there we go. So the labels are a bit scuffed, but which one of these do you think is older? The one in my left hand, and the one in my right hand, and by how much do you think it's older? There you go. I don't know if you can see the colours. I'll put it up there. You can see the colour of that one, and then the colour of that one. Answers on a postcard. I'm sure a lot of you are replying. I won't be able to fly through that constantly, but it is the darker one, but only by 6 months, and we'll get to talk about that later. But then when you think about this one, say, and this one, which do you think is older? Big question. Is it a really light one or the really dark one? Is it the really light one or the dark one? It's actually the light one. This is our 10-year-old Port Dundas, and this is actually, let me just check the code on the bottom. Yep, this is actually a 2-year-old, but it's darker because it's been in a first fill sherry cask. It's the cask, some of you may remember mentioning it last time, that I bought for my firstborn when he was born, distilled just a few days after he was born. And then I've loved it so much, even at this young age, that now half the cask is mine. He can have the rest of it when he's old enough to enjoy. Sonia asks about ice in whiskey. Personally, I don't put ice in whiskey. I know other people do and they enjoy it. That's absolutely fine. I personally happy to put quite a lot of water in if it's a high ABV whiskey, or that I feel it can take it. But when it comes to ice, I prefer not to, because for me, it just numbs the tongue, and I don't get the same level of experience and enjoyment and flavour experience that I do when I just have it either neat or with water. But it's all personal preference. The main thing is, if you're smiling when you're drinking it, everyone's a winner. That's all that matters. Don't let anyone tell you how to drink a whiskey. Graham asks, what's the best chocolate to pair with whiskey? That is a good question. Any chocolate, man. Any chocolate. Normally I would go darker chocolate, more bitter chocolate, because it does balance quite nicely, especially with a grain whiskey. But I'm a chocoholic, so I'll just eat any chocolate with mine. As long as it's not too kind of crazy flavoured, like a chili chocolate or like a something with a cream that really kind of coats the inside of your mouth. But sometimes that can take away from the whiskey. Other times though, say it's I'm trying to think of whatever that Quality Street or Roses, whatever generic Christmas whiskey in a tin, chocolate in a tin is, the one that has the caramel stuff inside it, that actually works blinding with the whiskey. So it all gets together, creates more flavours, and it builds and builds. It's absolutely beautiful. So let's move on to number 2, the Girvan. Let's see, someone said I keep freezing. I sincerely apologise if that is the case. It seems to be working fine on my side, but I do apologise. Yeah, hopefully I'm not freezing anymore. I was almost going to just stand still for a second and just whatever, but there's no need for that kind of chat. So I also, before we go on to the Girvan, just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. George Dunbar up in Dundee, 87 years old, and apparently he's been looking forward to this whiskey night for a while now. So cheers to you, sir. Wish you well and all the best, and I hope you have a great night as well. Cheers for joining us. So the Girvan for me is also very smooth, very not as creamy, I don't think. But we describe this one as like drinking boozy butter, because it has that more brandy butter note for me, slightly more of a spirity note, but really well worked. And this one has done phenomenally well with us. We released this early last year, I think it was. I do believe we only have the smaller bottles left on the website now. There's only a few of those guys left. Someone has just asked on here actually, where can I buy these whiskies? The ones that we have any left of on the GreatDrams Whisky shop on our website. Go to greatdrams.com. There's a link right in front of you, and they'll all purchases. Hopefully, if we can get to them all tomorrow, they'll be dispatched on Friday. That's the aim. Someone's saying that there's rubbish internet wherever they are. I do apologise for that. I don't know what else I can do about that. Apologies. Hopefully you'll be able to follow along. This is being recorded on no less than 2 devices, and the other one will be uploaded to YouTube tomorrow, hopefully. So that if you wanted to go back and review anything, you can. Keep the questions coming. That's absolutely superb. Excellent. So, Girvan, a distillery built in just 9 months by the William Grant and Sons company, and by Charlie Grant Gordon, who wanted this grain distillery, and it opened its doors. Spirit ran from it still on Christmas Day, I believe, of 1963, something like that, and it is one of those distilleries that is full of stories. And someone once asked me if grain distilleries are as beautiful as the classic kind of single malt distilleries with their gorgeous copper pot stills, like the Aberfeldies or the Strathislas of this world, that just look like you'd expect a distillery to look like on a postcard. And sadly not. Grain distilleries typically look like, I don't know, I described it once to someone as looking like Birmingham. It's very grey, lots of pipes. I normally would describe it as like industrial chic, because it is the technology and the thought process behind it. God knows how they put these things together, but they look amazing, and they produce a hell of a lot of spirit. So malt distilleries, they all vary, but say Lefroy gets about 6 or 8 million litres a year, something like that, of spirit comes off the stills there. At Girvan, I believe it's about 100 million litres, if not more now, every year, and it's turned off just for, I think it's 1 day a year for cleaning and maintenance, which is incredible, and using a process called continuous distillation on a Kofi still, and so you get this, and by doing that continuous distillation and how the process works on that specific column still, which is about 9 or 10 stories high, it's huge. It mellows the spirit. That's why grain whiskey is typically easier to drink and more of a mellow whiskey when you do try it. And yes, Kevin's got the right idea. turn it off and on again, all of your internet stuff where there's issues. So you should be able to do that, I hope. Anyway, Girvan. All right, I'm going to try it now. Let me know your thoughts and flavour and tasting notes in the comments, by the way. Apologies, Bob. I'll leave off Brum. Apologies. Lots of green apple and vanilla from Greg Burnett. That absolutely matches with what I'm getting on here. Yeah, and Bob's liking this one over the Invergordon. Superb. Classic. Okay. Cool. So there is still diversity in grain whiskey, even though most of it heads to blends, or blend fodder as we refer to it, unfortunately. But yeah, we love a grain. We love the smoothness of it, the kind of creaminess of it, the butteriness of it. And this one especially, if you put soda with it in a highball, for example, it is off the charts awesome. One of the most refreshing drinks I think you'll ever have, with a squeeze of fresh lemon. Boom, what's not to like? Cool. So, hope we're all happy with grain whiskey and Invergordon and Girvan. As I said, I think there's a couple of bottles of this left on the site, but there's definitely the smaller ones, the 20 cl bottles available if you were interested. Let's scroll down, see if there were any comments. It appears that I didn't refresh the page properly. Yes, more mellow, bit of an extra kick, interesting. Yeah, it's what I always find interesting, because all the ones we're trying tonight are the same ABV, but some of them come across stronger than others, even though they are technically the exact same strength. Always fascinates me how people react to that. Bob, yeah, you said you prefer it this time to last time you tried it. I find that with whiskey sometimes. It has to be, depends on the mood, who you're with, where you are, the temperature, what you've been eating that day. Everything ladders up to how you're going to experience that whiskey. And you could try this one today and maybe not enjoy it, then try it tomorrow on the sofa just watching TV and it's off the charts, you love it. It's strange, and I have that experience with quite a few actually. I won't name them, but there are some that I try it first time. I bought a bottle, crack it open, really excited as I often get, and it's like, oh balls, this isn't quite what I wanted. Then try it a few days later, or maybe add a bit more water next time I try it, and it works. It just works exceptionally well. So yeah, all I can say is keep trying them responsibly. And because you will naturally warm up and warm into some of them that take a bit longer to get into, especially cask strength releases. You do occasionally need to warm up, although Mr. McShane will say you start at cask strength and then go for other stuff. Apologies. Excellent. Cool. So very cool. Let's move on to the single malts. Now we're going to do something a little bit strange now. We're actually going to have our smoky one before we go into our sherry cask. And the reason for that, it is quite a soft smoke, whereas the sherry cask is quite a bold flavour. So actually having the sherry cask before the smoky one would probably wipe out the delicate nature of the smokiness. That was the logic. I hope it worked. It worked for me in practice. You know, you have to practice these things. So yeah, let's do this. So we're going to go with our BenRiach. It's the youngest one we've ever released. At 5 years old. But for us, it just worked and it didn't need any longer in the cask. I absolutely loved it when I tried the cask sample of it, and then we matured it for just a little bit longer than when we got it. And oh, one comment there, that's fine. And yeah, so we just felt, you know what, go. We don't need to age it through for the sake of it, because we try and give as much information about every whiskey as we possibly can. So the age is always loud and proud, front right of the label. You have the ABV, obviously, legal mandatories. You have stories about the distillery. You have the distilled date, the bottled date, individual bottle numbers. Then on the back, you have the flavour profile and my kind of vision of what was going on in my head when we chose it. And then the reason for bottling as well. So pretty much all the information we have, we give when we bottle. And as you can probably tell, I'm more than happy to answer any question after that. So that's what we do. And for me, this one is all about having a barbecue smoke note, which is kind of wrapped in a gorgeous toffee and lemon citrus note as well. On the nose, that follows through. Some people pick up the smoke more on the mid palate and finish, others get it straight away. So don't be confused if you're not getting it immediately. Yeah, Graham, absolutely. The age really is just a number. I know we all say that to kid ourselves as we get older, but for whiskey it really is. I mean, from a consumer or whiskey buyer, whiskey drinker perspective, the age number on the label helps you understand how old it is, obviously, but also helps you understand the pricing structure of ranges. But realistically, what does that age tell you about what's in the product? Not a lot. So flavour is much more important. That's why we felt this one was ready, and it's done really well. I should have said, by the way, the Girvan you tried picked up a couple of awards. I always forget this part. Where was it? Yes, it got double gold in the Great Taste Awards last year. Double gold in the Great Taste Awards. And Mr. Jim Murray and his delightful hat awarded us 91.5 out of 100 in his Whiskey Bible 2020, which we are obviously buzzing about. So really chuffed with that. So yeah, the Girvan really did good job for us. What do we think about the BenRiach? There's only 213 bottles of this one ever produced. I'm going to scroll, see if you've got any more questions. John Sparrow, number 2, the Girvan, still the best. Greggy, how did you know what name I had stamped on my jersey when I was doing the London Marathon all those years ago? Nice. Let's see. Not too many questions need answering as yet, I don't think. Okay, cool. I think I've scrolled way too far up. A little bit of it reminds you of the Great King Street Glasgow blend from Compass Box, and a bit more oily. Yeah, it's very much a softer peat. It's not a kind of backhander like a Lefroy or an Ardbeg. It's definitely not like those. Not like chewing on a peat brick like an Octomore. But that barbecue smokiness for me was just bonkers. I absolutely loved it. Mr. Burnett is asking, what type of cask was this matured in? Actually a second fill Oloroso sherry cask. And one that was still quite alive actually. So it got quite a lot of those fruity notes that you're getting came from that sherry cask. And that kind of underlying smokiness came from the BenRiach distillation process. Like sucking a Werther's, says Stu. PPM asks Duncan, I believe, that's a very good question. Loving the geekiness of the question as well, nice touch. I believe it's around 10 ppm that went into this. It says 5 years old, distilled in 2013. It's actually about 5.5 years old, but 5 is what it is. Will I have another cask of this, asks Matthew. Sadly not. We don't have any more BenRiach in the warehouse. We do have many other future releases in there, maturing away, sleeping away. But as yet, we don't have another BenRiach on the go. Maybe in the future, who knows? But I would definitely like to have another smoky one in the stable, in the range. But we'll probably won't be for a while now. Definitely after how things have panned out a little bit this year, we're having to rethink our release and ranging strategy for the next couple of years. But our next release is in the queue to be bottled, but that'll be a while off yet. I don't think it'll be out until end of year, maybe beginning of next, depending on how things go. Yeah, no smoky ones for a while now. Sorry. Let's see. I should have a smoky one. We have part casks of smoky ones, but they're mostly for personal use or our private clients. So yeah, for our range, not quite yet. Okie dokie. So, are we ready to move on to the sherry cask whiskey? Well, two actually. Both of the next two were matured predominantly in sherry casks. The next one from the Craigellachie distillery up in Speyside, the Rock of Speyside, the bad boy of Speyside as it's known locally. One of my absolute favourite distilleries. Their 23-year-old is high up there for me and one of my all-time favourite whiskies, and it is definitely Kirsty's favourite whiskey as well. Ours is an 11-year-old single cask, single malt Scotch whiskey, of which there are only 220 bottles ever made. I'll show you it now. There you go. The eagle-eyed amongst you might notice the bottle number that's been on every release so far. But this one, distilled in October 2007, and it was our second release, and picked up 1 gold star at the Great Taste Awards last year. Not the double gold of Girvan, but hey ho. This one came out. We call it our second release. It was about 3 weeks after the Invergordon. We went to market with both really, although Invergordon was technically launched a couple of weeks beforehand. And for me, I'd always wanted to own a cask of Craigellachie whiskey, as I'm sure most people do, or would like to. And so when I had the opportunity, I bought it when it came up and was offered, and the sample was off the charts. But I actually bought it when it was maturing in a first fill ex-bourbon cask. So it'd been in there for 10.5 years-ish, maybe just over. And then knowing the Craig 23, or Craigellachie 23, apologies, how the sherry component, the sherry cask works so well with that spirit, that really meaty, big spirit of the Craigellachie distillery. I wanted it in a sherry cask, no matter what happened. Excuse me 1 second. Apologies, I'm really trying to suppress this thing whilst we're all chatting and dramming. So I do sincerely apologise. And so I wanted this Craigellachie and wanted it in a sherry cask. Didn't know how the hell to do that. Because bear in mind, we'd been planning this for a long time. But there's certain things you just don't know how to do when you're starting off. Like, how do you finish a whiskey? Oh, cool, you put it into a different cask. Right, where'd you get that other cask? That's a good question. How do you put it in? Then what do you do? How long do you leave it? And many, many other questions. So I ended up having a first fill Oloroso sherry cask, bespoke made for us. We had it done at, I think it was 240 litres in size, to match the amount of whiskey we had in the ex-bourbon cask. I thought that was the obvious thing to do. Turned out that's quite an expensive thing to do. But I wanted to indulge and wanted to do the right thing by the spirit, so we did it. And so I had it made and kind of constructed and actually brought down from a bigger cask. They reshaped it into the right size for us. So first fill ex-bourbon, really aggressive cask. Going into a first fill Oloroso sherry, quite an aggressive cask. And somehow they made great friends and they created a wonderful whiskey. And so I put it in, and then I was like, how long do I leave this thing in here? In my head, I was like, let's just do it for a few months and see what happens. But then I started bricking it, like actually bricking it. And normally with all of our releases, I'll get a set of samples sent down from the warehouse of all of our casks, maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, depending on certain releases and the schedule and what I want to go out when. But this one, I was so convinced I was going to screw up this amazing whiskey and totally botch a finish, which I definitely didn't want to do, obviously, both for the commercial reasons, but also, for a pride reason. Sorry, one of the cameras has just fallen down. Give me a second. Let me fix that bad boy. Come on, you can stay up. There we go. So I actually got samples sent down every 3 or 4 weeks. and only little samples just to make sure I hadn't absolutely screwed the pooch on this one. And then when it got to 4 months, I was like, bloody hell, this is awesome. I want this now. And then we had a chat about it, we tried it. Well, let's see what happens. Give it another few weeks and just see. So we gave it one more cycle, and then I was like, right, fine. At 6 months, boom, job done. Let's bottle the thing. And so I got the sample, was like, this is off the charts, go. And so then it was bottled and released. And so it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. And let me show you. I showed you them already, but I didn't tell you what they were. This was the Craigellachie, if you remember earlier, the samples were 6 months difference. This was the Craig, call it Bottle Zero, pre-finished cask sample, 65.7 ABV with my shoddy writing on it. And if you see the colour there, that's the colour we effectively got it at. So nice golden amber, honey notes. And then this was the cask sample, also Bottle Zero. I should probably change that. At 62.9, I think my writing says, %. But this was the pre-production sample that I eventually signed off. So in just 6 months, it took 10.5 years to get that colour, and then in 6 months it turned into that colour. So as I said, 6 months turned it from this, which took 10.5 years to get to that colour, into this, and then the colour of the whiskey you're trying now. So for me, this one is all about Christmas in a glass, really. Those kind of gorgeous fruitcake notes, that really over enjoyment of sherry notes on there. Potentially allowed it to kind of go a bit over the sherry kind of yardstick, but you know what? I love it, so I'm not going to apologise for that. Also picked up a couple of awards, so we're okay with that stuff as well. And have to say, it's one that I keep a bottle of next to the bed at all times. And yeah, God bless it. Absolutely love the stuff. Thomas West. The Craigellachie is bloody sensational. Shame you sold out. Absolutely. This is one of those rare ones where I kind of really wish we'd done a mass release of it. But nature of our business is, when it's sold out, it's sold out. So every bottle being individually numbered, as you see on there, means that there's traceability. So once those bottles are gone, you'll never get them again, and we'll never have the same cask again. Because casks, even distilled the same day, filled the same day, matured for the same amount of time, next to each other, can taste wildly different. They'll still have that distillery character or DNA, but they could be very different in terms of what character they take from that wood. So every single cask is unique, it's different, and that's why we love what we do. It gives us something to talk about each year, or each season when we do our releases. We have something different to talk about, and a different passion that can come through as well. You see all the different cask samples or cask releases we've done here. The colours are so different, and the flavours are so different, and yeah, that's what keeps it really interesting for us as well. John Sparrow, do you and your wife call yourself Gregsty as a couple? Absolutely not. We've never done that. Yeah, I don't have any more for that question. Sorry, mate. Excellent. Lots of positivity for Craigie. More robust, absolutely. Yeah, it is the Craigellachie, because of that kind of thicker, meatier spirit, owing to the worm tubs used in cooling, in the condensing side of the process. It creates more copper contact, which makes a thicker, meatier spirit, which then, when it's developed and matured, creates that bold character that everyone who loves the Craigellachie knows and loves. Let's see. Lots of positivity for Craig. Superb. Someone just said James Gardner has a nice loft. Cool. I don't necessarily know who James Gardner is offhand. I will Google that later. Paul, sadly the answer is no to your question of can you come and sleep here. Stuart has asked a question, which is, how do you select the casks to buy? And so, really good question. There's a number of different factors. Availability, options. We have people offering us casks all the time, which is cool. And we have to be really selective and work with quality partners who we know have access to some incredible spirit. We buy stuff quite young, we buy some stuff quite old. We're currently maturing one, which it turned 30 on December the 27th. So, you know, we're playing with lots of different ages. I think the youngest, well, we've got loads of new make stuff, but the youngest legal whiskey, so to speak, is 4 years old. And we just picked that up a few weeks ago. And so yeah, very much looking forward to seeing how that develops over the next few years. It's one that, knowing the distillery really well, I can't say what it is yet because it's still very much work in progress. Knowing that distillery incredibly well, I know it's going to turn into a belter when we do decide to release it. The question is, do we go old or do we go a couple of years, a few years, whatever? We don't know yet. That'll depend on how the samples develop as we get them sent down from the team in the warehouse. So we buy based on flavour profile, we buy based on intrigue, we buy based on my favourite distilleries. Frankly, there's obviously personal bias in there. And so there's a lot of different factors that come into it, but it always has to be amazing whiskey. That's the bottom line. And there's no getting away from that. If it's not great, we're not having it. Yeah, hope that answers your question. What is your favourite core expression range from Craigellachie? 23-year-old, hands down. It's, yeah, divine. I'm actually looking at a bottle on the shelf right now, wondering if I should crack into it later. Yeah, their exceptional casks are amazing as well. Billy says, yes, it is. If just over 3 years old is the legal minimum. Sorry, maybe it wasn't clear. Our youngest mature whiskies. So before 3 years old, you can only call it a spirit drink or just spirit. So when it goes over 3, it's now legally called whiskey. But our youngest one that's hit that marker is 4 years old. Yeah. Yes, this one does actually take water quite well. Kevin asks, how often do you sample from a cask? I briefly touched on it earlier, but probably about 3 times a year on average. I'll get samples from every cask we have just to check that they're all okay. Let's see. Who are your favourite distilleries? Asked Graham. Have a look at our releases so far, I should suggest. No, I love lots of distilleries, and some that we could never buy casks from because they just never become available, like Glenfiddich or Strathisla, Lefroy, beautiful distillery, Ardbeg as well. These ones just are never available, so we just kind of made peace with that, and by making peace with it, you just kind of move on. But there's some really interesting ones that we try to go for with distilleries that are not always front of mind of people who drink whiskey. So it creates something interesting for us, but then hopefully for them as well, or for you guys as well, when you're seeing a release from us that isn't from a classic whiskey. So it's not a 12-year-old Glenfiddich or Glenlivet or, you know, one of those. It's not saying they're not great whiskies, don't get me wrong, but you see them all over the place. Whereas ours, hopefully, you see something that's different, is a little bit unique, and most independent bottlers do a similar thing. So yeah, that's our kind of sampling strategy. Chris asks, Glencairn or Norland? Very good question. We opt for Glencairn. I actually love them. I have hundreds of them, so it helps. But if you indulge me 1 second. We have all kinds of different glassware knocking around here, just so we can try different whiskies in different glasses, see what the difference is. There's one more funky one here. Oh, neat glass, which I've always found, as a bearded man, I've always found this one a little bit harder to drink from. It creates more spillage than it needs to. Put these back again before I drop them. But yeah, so Glencairn glass is always the one that we would opt for. So, Philip Scales, I'm not telling you that. What is the best type of wood to minimise cask evaporation? Asks Graham Pritchard. Very good question. Good wood. Simply, if you've got a great cask and it doesn't leak, that's the aim of the game, really. But it really does depend. Our evaporation rates vary vastly across the casks that we have in. In the Craigellachie release, we had very minimal evaporation rate, which we're quite happy with that. But then in Invergordon, a lot of it went in those 11 years. So it varies so much. Sherry casks tend, because of how long they've been made, seasoned, and been used for sherry, and then kind of tested and checked when they come over from Jerez to Scotland, they tend to be in better condition, we've experienced. And they're also bloody expensive. So an ex-bourbon cask will set you back 220 quid or something plus that. An ex-sherry cask, first fill that is, will probably be in the 900 quid to £1,000 region. They're very expensive, but they produce amazing whiskies. And they are typically bigger, but we opt for the smaller one. As we mentioned earlier, let's see. Yes, Jim, completely agree. The Norland glass dribbles. Yeah, I've never really got on with it. Bob has asked, have I definitely run out of the Craigellachie? It was awesome. I actually have a few, I think it's literally 6 of the 20 CL bottles. So if anyone watching is interested in having the 20 CL bottles, we don't have any of the big ones, I don't think. But any of the 20 CL bottles, message me or email me through the website or greg@greatdrams.com, and I'll sort that out, because I don't think it's on the site. So do message me and I'll deal with that for you. Any delays on casks with COVID-19, asks Paul. Not really. It's availability and accessibility of like updates on casks. It has been challenging. Getting samples has been an absolute nightmare. So we've basically put in most of our stock on an additional maturation period, and just letting it be. Because if we worried about it, we'd just be worrying for no reason. But realistically, we weren't planning to have a new release until Christmas time anyway, so it hasn't massively affected our plans. For next year, it slightly has, because we haven't been able to buy many casks because of this. But hey, it's definitely the least of everyone's issues and problems, so we're not going to moan about that. Everyone on the front line and from the post service who's given us a few challenges tonight with sending samples, but they're doing such an incredible job through all of this. Let's use that word, unprecedented times, that we can't really moan about it. And then everyone who's putting their lives in the way of this virus to help everyone do much more important things than we are. So we're not going to whine about not being able to buy some more whiskey. It's just one of them things. Let's see. Any other questions before we move on to the last one? Owen says it's not all about size. I think he's replying to someone else, because I don't think I ever said anything about that. So that's cool. Do you need to keep whiskey in the box you buy it in? Asks Jack. The answer is no, Jack. The guidance for, let me just pause my comments so I don't lose them. The guidance for storage are pretty simple actually. Keep bottles upright and at least 15 centimetres off the ground, because then your insurance will pay out. Check with them first, but that's the case with ours. Because then you mitigate the flooding situation if that ever happens. And yes, keep them out of direct sunlight, upright, and ideally in a constant temperature. So it doesn't have to be super cold. Try it not to have it super hot, but constant is what helps. because then you don't get those peaks of crazy heat or drastic cold and makes the liquid volatile, and with such an ABV it can get a bit stressy with it. But yeah, you don't have to keep it in the box. I normally do, personally, unless I've got multiples of a bottle, and then I probably won't bother keeping all of them. Yeah, that's how to do it. Let me check. Cara and Jono, I haven't followed that chat, but I've just seen that sounds like a group trip. I'll bring Greg too. Awesome. Whatever it is, I'm there when we're legally allowed to do it. John Sparrow, I'm never answering that question. Probably a year without whiskey would be easier. What else? What are some of the bottles on your top shelf? I'm assuming you mean this shelf. We have, oh look, a Girvan 25-year-old. We have a Craigellachie 24. A Weems Honey Spice first fill sherry. I even used to write all the codes for cask, single cask, ABV, all that stuff. Yeah, there's a few interesting things there. Kevin says, why can't you lie it down? Typically, if you lie it down, the strength of the ABV can disintegrate the cork over time, and it will just mean that later in life you'll have leakages, or the cork will fail when you open it. Yeah, that's why you shouldn't lie it down. Unlike wine, which keeps it moist and is actually quite beneficial, so you have that lay down. With whiskey, it's the opposite because of the ABV. Yes, I do have a couple of bottles they've been matured in Mizunara casks. I have a Yamazaki 18 Mizunara cask, single cask. Woof. And then there is one knocking around here. Oh. This guy, which I absolutely love. I think it's about 80 quid on Master of Malt or La Maison de Whiskey, one of the two. Seriously nice stuff. Right, shall we move on to number 5, the final whiskey of the night. This, you guys are amongst the absolute first people to try it. We did a private tasting with some very good friends of mine, RVJ and her mates, a couple of weeks ago, and they were the actual first people outside of Kirsty and myself to try this whiskey, and you all are the next set of people. So yeah, there's 122 of you watching right now, and if you've all got one of these in your hand, 122 of you will be yeah, amongst the first 125 to have tried it. So this is our oldest release to date, 12 years old. It's from what we call the Blended Cask series. So that's blends, obviously. This is our third release in it, so it's batch 3. Our first was our Christmas special edition. And then our batch 2, which we launched a few weeks ago. Now this is batch 3, and it's our first ever blended malt. So that's a blend that doesn't have grain in it. It's a blend just of malt whiskies. And all of them, or predominantly all of them, have been matured in ex-sherry casks. So you should get that on the nose, and mostly Speyside as well. So, for me, on the nose, you're just getting that real classic spicy sherry note come through. There is a little bit of sweetness and that kind of raisiny, dark berry fruit note as well. Oh yeah. On the palate, absolutely, for me, a belter. Smooth, easy drinking, but those classic sherry notes coming through. Let me show you the bottle. Right to there. And this was actually produced after demand from you guys, our customers, who wanted another sherry release after trying the Craigellachie and then also the Christmas blend. And only 150 bottles of this one ever produced. Each individually numbered as well. And yeah, 46.2 ABV, 12 years old. And for me, it's got that really well-rounded, malty, spicy and winter fruit note that you'd want from a sherry cask. So, let me see if there's any comments. bloody delicious. Awesome. John Sparrow, it's a winner. How much for a bottle? I think these ones are on at 55 quid on the website. Gives you free postage as well. Yeah, get online and buy them all now. But yeah, they're available on the website. We've had a few go, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this. But looking at how many people are watching, there should be just enough for all of you. I think 5 of you might miss out if you all buy one. Let's see. Oh, this is the best of the night. Awesome. Best one yet. Lovely. Matthew, love this and feel it's wrong to want more of a blended whiskey than a smoky malt. I know how much you love your smoky whiskies. From the very first time we met and we were enjoying the Lefroy PX cask that I bought in travel retail. Yeah, but this one for me, well, obviously I love it. I'm hugely biased and always will be, but I will always be honest about that. I love it. And when the sample bottles arrived for this as well, Kirsty found it quite amusing that I squirreled one of these up to sit next to the bottle of Craigellachie on my side of the bed, and I kind of got through all of it. Yes, responsibly, of course. But I absolutely love the stuff. It's a winner for me. Excellent drop. This one with dark chocolate, says Bob. Which casks were used? Predominantly Oloroso sherry casks, a mix of first and second fill, and I think there's a touch of PX in there as well. But yeah, it's predominantly Oloroso. John, thank you so much for your lovely comments there. Truly appreciated. And likewise, I hope we get to meet and dram soon. And if not soon, let's do a Zoom. And yeah, it's been way too long since I've seen you. That's for sure. Tom says blend is brilliant. My favourite of the night. Chris, refresh my mind. What's the name? This is the GreatDrams Blended Cask Series, batch number 3, 12-year-old, 46.2 ABV. Our oldest release yet. Yeah, and no grain, as I said, it is all malt whiskies within the recipe for this guy. Luke, whiskey on the bedside table feels like a dangerous move. It's actually a few shelves up because of the children. So, all responsible. Let's see what else is going on here. Comments flying in. Love the idea of a bedside whiskey. Cracking night again. Love these tastings. Thank you so much, Kevin. Truly appreciated, sir. Glad you've had a good one. Great night. Someone's on their way to James Gardner's loft. I think he'll be disappointed. I still don't know who that is. I will have to look that up. Will you be doing an Isla tasting set or a peated one? Asked Thomas. That is a good question. If we did, it wouldn't be from our range because we don't have that. We might be able to lob in some BenRiach. But I'll look into that. Thank you very much for the suggestion. I'll definitely try. Thanks for a great evening. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me. Here we go. Lots of people saying this is the best of the night. Awesome. Ace. Cool. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for getting involved, for dramming along, for your awesome questions and comments, and surprising amount of interest in my shoes. I'll see if I can wear a different set of Liverpool themed shoes next week, or next time, whenever it is. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It really is appreciated. As I said, all the blended malt is available on the website. There's probably some of the others on there as well, so take a look if you're interested. Even in the smaller versions, the 20 CLs. We'll try and get all of them dispatched on Friday. Apologies for those who've had issues with receiving the sample sets. Said we've done our absolute best and the post service are doing their best, but they're working with a skeleton crew and distancing and all that stuff. So it's natural that there'll be some delays along the way. Frustrating as it is, we kind of just have to roll with it in these times. On the site as well, I should probably mention, there's a few more virtual events. We have our virtual highball evening, so whiskey and soda making and comparing different styles of whiskey and soda and how they work and how refreshing they are. That's coming up in a couple of weeks, and there's a few tickets left for that on the website, so check it out. There's a blend your own whiskey night as well, coming up in 3 weeks, I think. We're looking to ship all of those next week, so if you do want to get involved, check out the site now so we can get that dealt with. We've got our gin tasting night actually sold out, so we put on a second night, the night after, on the 21st of May. And then the following week after that, we've got a GreatDrams range tasting of all the current whiskies in the range. So you'll be able to try some of the, the BenRiach and this one again, and then the other whiskies, the Port Dundas, the Glentockers, etc. You get to try those. So you have all the ones that we actually have bottles left of. And more importantly, we all get to do something awesome like this again. Sit down, or me standing up. Don't know if any of you are standing up. If you are, why? And so we get to have a bit more fun. And it just kind of breaks up the week, right? Have a nice whiskey night. Hopefully you're not bored of listening to my, smooth, soft southern tones. But if you are, I apologise. You can always mute me. But I'm loving all the chat that's coming through in the comments and all the answers, all the questions as well. I'm going to stay around for another 15 minutes or so. So if you've got any more questions, want to chat, do feel free, and I'll be reading them and answering them into the camera. So we've got it all for those who can't make it tonight. Let me just scroll up. A load of them just came in there. Very kind. Everyone saying brilliant night. Thanks, big fella. Cheers, Paul. Thanks for the evening. Says Stuart. It's been on board a bottle. Marvellous. Thank you very much, Stuart. That's very kind. Let's see. Jono, you're correct. I didn't call you weird. You weirdo. And let's see. Such an amazing session, Greg. Really appreciate it. That's very kind, Graham. Save the best to last, said Trevor. Many thanks, and thank you as well. You're all so kind and very nice. Thank you. And it's still 107 of you watching me watch a screen answer some questions. Love it. Awesome. Let's see. Wonderful evening. I like how so many of you are having Zoom calls at the same time as being on here. That's really cool. I do love that. You're all so nice. Loving the live whiskey tastings, says, I just scrolled up, says Darren. Very funny. A question, any sneak previews of the tastings yet to be announced? All the ones on the site are the ones we've got currently. We'll hopefully, we've enjoyed this so much and we've had such amazing feedback. Even when all the restrictions are lifted, hopefully we'll try to keep doing some virtual tastings for those of you who can't be with us, or I can't be with you drinking whiskey, because hopefully, why not? A good Wednesday night in for all of us, right, so far? Yes, gin tasting, as I said, the first one sold out, but the second one is live on the site right now. Oh, pardon me. Graham asked, do I have a mature your own barrel kit where you top up with various whiskies? Do you know what? I don't as a product, but bear with me a second. I'm going to have to move a few things. Definitely was not prepared for this question. Oh, hello. Come on. Have a little infinity barrel in my office. It's got my name on it, but it's actually not me, it's Dylan's. It's from the Dylan's Distillery in Canada. So this is actually Canadian, first use, Canadian oak, 4 litre, and it's kind of an infinity barrel. So what I do is when I finish with press samples, I put them in here. Currently empty, but we'll be looking to refill this guy as I tidy up my office next. I don't know where I'm going to put this now. And then also have these infinity bottles. So that's a Scotch one, an Irish one, the second Scotch one, American and World. So those whiskies have been there a while, so we'll see how they've been marrying and intertwining at some point. Let's see. Oh, Simon, I would love to sort out a Japanese whiskey tasting, but availability of Japanese whiskey, good Japanese whiskey, is going to be the challenge here. Sonia asked you to do the gin to kill the waiting time for your whiskey. We haven't made the gin. The gin is actually, we've been working with different gin distilleries to pull this together, and we'll be announcing who they are in the next few days. But yeah, the gin is because people have been asking for it, so we thought, cool, let's do a gin night. And so it comes with a set of 4 gins, 4 double measure gins, and then a couple of bottles of tonic. And then the idea is we'll go through, try them each neat, and see what the differences are, and then try them with the various tonics, so you have a whole flavour experience of how to try gin, but then also how tonics do different things to gins, but how distillers have created amazing gins, and they really are incredible gins. Yeah, so get involved. And let's see, any other questions? This was Chris Ferguson's birthday present from your friend Mark. Awesome. Very cool. Chris Preston says, in our house we call your show Wetflix. Love it. And let's see. And and all the kids sit around drinking whiskey and taking a swig when you hold up a bottle. Marvellous. In that case, I'll hold another one up. Off you go, team. There you go. Screw it. And another one. There you go. There's a double for you. We're also, one of the things that we are doing, and we haven't really told anyone this, but if you wanted private tastings, we are doing that as well. We've done a couple of those over the last week actually, and we get on a Zoom and we send out either 20 CLs or 50 mils or 25 mils, depending on what you want for the tasting. We're doing one on Saturday, which I'm very much looking forward to, and we all have a chat about whiskies. We go through it. I'm normally on the sofa instead of standing. But yeah, get in touch and let me know if you're interested in one of those as well. So we've got a lot of different options with that. And so yeah, can accommodate whatever you're looking for. If you wanted something more private and more kind of speaking to each other instead of typing as I speak. Is there a whiskey festival that I would recommend going to? Depends where you are, Duncan. To be honest, I go to the Manchester one with my father-in-law. We treat it more as an FA Cup final type thing. It's more of a day for us to go and enjoy whiskey, chat to people. It's not one of taking notes and all that. And then, let's see, what other ones do I go to? It's been quite busy the last couple of years. I haven't really gone to many. If you're ever in China, Whiskey L in Shanghai is off the charts amazing. So do check that out. Whiskey Live Paris, of course, and Whiskey Live London. I always do enjoy going down to that. Don't know when we'll next have any whiskey festivals, to be brutally honest, but you know, one day we'll all do it again. David Finley, will there be another whiskey night? Yes. If you check out the site, there's 3 different ones: the highball one, the blend your own, and then there's the range tasting in a few weeks. Darren, defo keep going. Greg, I will. Thank you, sir. That's it, Bob. Very good point, actually. Having these virtual tastings means that no one has to drive, so keeping it responsible and safe. I like that. When is the next tasting night? Sorry, says Kevin. It'll be on the website, but I think it's May. Oh God, when is it? It's May 7th. Oh, I don't know actually. Check the website. I can't remember offhand. Actually, do you know what? I'll do that for you right now. Just give me a second. So highball night is on. Oh, come on the 6th of May. Then we have blend your own whiskey on the 14th of May. Then we have the gin tasting on the 20th and 21st, and then the full range tasting on the 27th. We may add more in, so keep checking back. But that's where we're at the minute. Let's see. What's next? What's next for GreatDrams? Good question. It all kind of depends really. We love what we're doing, so hopefully more releases. We're looking to export as well. That was ideally the plan this year, but pretty obvious that ain't happening. But yeah, we're doing a lot more private releases as well. So people coming to us wanting their own release of whiskey, be it a company or people, because we're quite flexible. We can do small runs, or we can do bigger runs. So it all depends really on what people want, and we're happy to accommodate as much as we can. Oh, I managed to click the wrong button there. What's a morning whiskey and what's a night whiskey? I always joke that grain whiskey is a breakfast whiskey, and ideally I would jokingly class it as one of your 5 a day, but I'm joking, it isn't, it really isn't. But yeah, grain whiskey is seen as a breakfast whiskey, because it's easy drinking, smooth, that kind of thing. Nighttime whiskey for me is more smoky ones, because as soon as you've had a smoky whiskey, your mouth is shot to, not in a bad way, but you can't have any of the more delicate ones. Do you think gin will overtake whiskey in years to come? It's tough. Whiskey's been on a good ride the last few years. Gin in more recent times has been. What I think this virus thing will do is actually consolidate gin a lot more. So brands will be bought out by bigger players, and some of the smaller producers will just cease to exist because of costs and operational issues due to the whole COVID thing. In whiskey, I don't actually think we'll see too much of that, because the stock is laid down so far in advance, and supply chains will be the big issue probably around the world. But again, where there's a will, there's a way, is what I often find in this industry, and people will make it work somehow, and we'll all ride through it and hopefully be fine on the other side. Let's see. Whiskey Fringe in Edinburgh is amazing, David. Really good point. Matthew, absolutely. I can't wait to get back to the Cask either with a few bottles. Let's see. Oh, of course, Dublin Whiskey Live. Tom and I went to that last year, met so many incredible people. We were going to go back this year, but obviously probably not happening. But yeah, we had an amazing time. One of my favourite whiskey shows I think I've ever been to, actually. All the people were amazing, great chat, great whiskies, good fun. Richard asks, are we expecting a Christmas 2020 release? Maybe. I haven't quite got that far yet. It really does depend on how everything pans out. But there will be one released at Christmas time, if not a bit before. But whether it's designated a Christmas release, I'm not sure yet. Thank you all for a great night. Lots of people saying thanks again. Really, really kind of you guys. Right, I've got to the bottom of all the questions, so I'm going to wrap up now and say again, thank you all for spending the night with me on Facebook and trying what I hope you'd agree was some really cool, different, interesting and fascinating whiskies. If you're interested in any of them, check them out on the site. As I said, the ones that are available are on there. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay indoors, protect the NHS, all that stuff. And I truly hope everyone is safe and well and gets through all of this. And whilst we're having to be in our own houses, we can meet online every few weeks and do this kind of thing. Awesome. Have a great rest of your night. Cheers and good night.